After months of uncertainty and drama, Kenya's Electoral Commission has announced the results of last week's rerun vote. Incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta has been declared the winner with 98% of the vote. He's gained the required minimum vote despite residents in more than 20 opposition districts not casting their ballots. Now, opposition leader Raila Odinga had boycotted last week's election, calling the proceedings a sham. It's not clear what action Odinga will take now that Kenyatta has been declared the winner, but he may approach the courts once again.
I, as a Kenyan, celebrate our resilience as a nation, but I also celebrate our resilience and the resilience of our democracy, the resilience of our people, and also the resilience of our institutions. Any other country experiencing the turns and twists of our recent electoral process would have burst asunder. But our Kenyan resilience will not tire. It will not give in to obvious provocations and base invitation to the politics of darkness. But for this blessing of reason, long-suffering and passion for country, I take this opportunity to thank God.
Well, let's delve further into the economic impact of this election. Johnson Derry now joins us in the studio. He is a manager of corporate finance and advisory at ABC Capital. Welcome to the studio, sir. Well, let's start with the market reaction to the events, of course, of this past week. We've seen the NSE probably took the worst beating, about $2 billion wiped out in market cap. We didn't see much impact on the shilling, but does this repeat vote reduce some of that investor uncertainty?
Well, of course it does, and the people who are not very well versed in the market, I mean in trading in the country, or even those who are well versed, including locals, are putting a risk premium on investing them. So they would only invest at certain prices. So you'd see prices drop up to a level where investors are comfortable investing in, and you know, pick it up from there. So it did have an impact, of course.
Quite an impact. What about the shilling? Because we saw, surprisingly, it wasn't affected as much. It was actually stronger against the, well, it strengthened against the dollar today. What is your outlook on the currency, of course, given the events?
Well, you know, the currency, Kenya shilling versus USD, has got both local and international drivers that determine the pricing. And as a result, you must look at it in that context. So from the local context, we expect an upswing, and that's because perhaps as matters get resolved, you expect that investors will take a brighter, you know, outlook of the entire, you know, investment climate. And if it's still a go, you expect more money to pour in, pursuing the various opportunities that are available. So from an international perspective, yes, we've seen the dollar index strengthening. LIBOR, I think, is moving up. So again, that could offer some resistance to shilling strength against the dollar. So it's a dynamic situation. Let's see how it goes, but I think I'm a little bit more bullish going forward now that the situation seems to be resolving itself.
Well, do investors, especially the foreign investors, do you think they hold that same view? Are they bullish on Kenya going forward?
Yeah, yes, they are, and I think the issue is looking for mispriced assets. The other issue is looking for yield much higher than what, you know, Kenya offers much higher yields than other you know, securities, especially in the West. So you still expect more interest coming to Kenya.
But the reality is, the situation still remains somewhat unresolved. We had opposition leader Raila Odinga calling for a new election in 90 days. Still a lot of unhappiness and unrest in certain parts of the country. So is there clarity on the path forward for the economy?
I think the most important thing when you look at the entire scenario, yes, there's uncertainty, there's probability of conflict, but if you read it closely and you listen to the pronouncement from both sides, it sounds very mature. It looks like we'll ride this one out and get out on the other side. So as long as the approach to dealing with the situation remains, civil, I think that will be taken as a positive for both the Kenyan way of maybe handling conflict and maybe a plus for the judiciary. So I think that's what gives us cause for optimism going forward.
Now, this political standoff has certainly blunted economic growth in the country. Someone actually said that Kenya is a country that investors want to like, certainly because of its great prospects. Are you optimistic about the outlook for growth in the economy going forward?
I think we'll still see growth. My concern obviously is, and I do have concerns from the private sector side of things, because the indicators that we've been seeing have not been very good. But nevertheless, I think there's room for a turnaround. Maybe one area where we could see some movement is with regards to banking amendment act that the amendment that put the interest rate caps. So there's been I think movement towards repealing it, and that will probably free financing for SMEs, who are really the people who actually drive the economy going forward. So if that happens, we can see some relief.
Well, you're certainly hopeful going forward. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Pleasure.
Of course, Johnson Nderi with ABC Capital.